Hi, my name is Gabriella Monkowitz, and this is my U.S. History Timeline. In 1790, European immigrants began to hear word of the new country, America. Europeans started to travel to the U.S. in search of more space for farming, to avoid diseases, and to find more resources. Native American populations started to dwindle during this migration as more diseases from Europe were brought to America, which the Native Americans were exposed to and ultimately caused their population to significantly decrease. In the image to the right, you can see how the new population in America consisted mostly of European and British migrants, while the Native American population was much smaller in comparison, less than 100,000 total population for the whole country. In 1882, the Chinese Exclusion Act deported many Chinese American citizens that were employed in mining. Some Chinese citizens that were born in America were greatly affected by this act if their parents were born in another country such as China. The story of Wong Kim Ark being an example of this unjust law, as he was a U.S. citizen from San Francisco, but his parents were from China, so he was wrongfully detained at customs while traveling. Ark filed a habeas corpus action to prove that he was wrongfully detained, but the U.S. court did not see the detainment as going against the law, even though Ark was a U.S. citizen. Through 1929 to 1939, Mexican repatriation displaced many Mexican American citizens and immigrants. This was incredibly detrimental to anyone who looked like mestizos or barrios. People of Hispanic nationalities were targeted by the Immigrant and Naturalization Service that deported many immigrants, which 60% were U.S. citizens. The reason for this unjust displacement was said to be due to the close proximity of the Mexican border in the U.S. and severely impacted Mexican population in the U.S. at the time. Around the late 60s, ethnic groups started to unite, such as the Native Americans and the Red Power movement. The Red Power movement united Native Americans of all tribes by creating an organization known as the American Indian Movement, also known as AIM, which prioritized peaceful protest to gain back treaty rights. An example of AIM's power was seen in fissions that were fishing protests to gain back access to fishing in states such as Washington and Oregon. This movement would continue as Native Americans consistently fought back against broken treaties in the U.S. Since the early 2000s, ethnic populations began to increase, especially with the African American population. Between 2000 and 2010, Black Africans were one of the fastest growing populations, with many of them residing in U.S. states such as New York, Florida, California, Illinois, and Texas, with about 21% living in the Midwest and 15% living in Western states. Some African Americans began immigrating from the Caribbean with about 1.7 million people, and some from Africa with about 1.1 million people, which helped America grow its Black African population. History has shown many hardships for immigrants, especially those that did not look like typical white Americans. Racist laws from history have been combated with peaceful protests like the Red Power movement. It is important that citizens of the U.S. never have to be concerned with deportations for the way they look like what happened with the Mexican repatriation in 1929 through 1939. Currently, immigrants have a slightly easier time living in the U.S. comparative to decades ago. There is still a lot of room for improvement and inclusion of different nationalities in the U.S.